Right. Well, welcome to a painting tutorial. A friend of mine said, "Nate, why don't you do a painting tutorial?" And then I was like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds fun." And I happen to have the camera, borrowing a camera from work, and it's Christmas. Got some time to kill, so why not? So welcome to Nate's Stalwart Minis painting tutorial. Let's paint Medusa, but it's not. It's not really Medusa. Let's go. Okay, so what I've got here is a alternate 3D print of Medusa. This is going to be for Marvel Crisis Protocol. And I'm going to paint her. I already own the Medusa Mini, the official one. So I've got this 3D print because I plan to paint her up to be specifically for my Winter Guard scheme. So my Winter Guard scheme is mostly red and yellow with a bit of white snow kind of on the bases. There's not much of a base on this one, but we'll get some snow in between her hair there. I'll show you a little example of that. So here we go. Here's Crimson Dynamo. This is the leader of my Winter Guard. So this is kind of the guy who we base the scheme around. So red, yellow, white. So that's what we're aiming for today. This is a 3D print by, I think this is C27 Miniatures. This one was printed by Phalanx Printing on Etsy. Thank you, Phalanx Printing. So what I've already done here is I've given her a base coat with an airbrush, just in brown, because she's mostly hair, she's mostly brown. If you don't have an airbrush, you can obviously use a rattle can, or just slap some paint on a brush. It's fine. It just saves a lot of time if you can get it out spraying. And that's going to be kind of a big base coat job done for us. So we can immediately start with painting her outfit. I don't really have a plan for this miniature. We're just going to sort of crack on and see how it goes. Yeah, so I'll start with a base coat. I'm going to start with Mephiston Red. Mephiston Red is probably my favorite paint. If I had to pick a favorite, a weird thing to do, but if I had to pick a favorite, I'd pick Mephiston Red. So there we go. Give it a little shake. Always shake your paints. What are we doing? Good shake. Someone will probably say like, "Oh, Nate, why are you still using Citadel pots? Dropper bottles are far superior." And I say you're wrong. Love the little Citadel bottles. Yeah, they do dry up around the edge, but just clean them every now and then. I find I constantly with the dropper bottles, I'll spray the bottle and it'll clog, and then it'll just like splurge out. I'll end up losing loads of paint onto my palette because it like got a little bit jammed. That's no good. Right, so got water. Oh, that's one thing I haven't got over here. Some water. Oh, you can see my tat on my desk. This is very unprofessional. Let me move that. I changed my palette foam because it was so disgusting and smells a bit moldy. I'm not gonna lie. So I changed it today because it's Christmas and we deserve a little something. Treat yourselves for Christmas. So we'll do the usual. Thin the paint down. Bit of water there. The consistency of milk, they say. What does that mean? Now I'm going to adopt my painting pose, which you can't see, thankfully. I've angled the camera so you can't. You can just see my legs, but I've got my legs crossed here. I don't know, it helps. And we'll just start laying in some red. Now you can still see the brown through, that's fine. Brown's a good base color for red. I like to base it brown if I'm going to paint something red. So this is great for us. We'll just crack on here. Now I don't really know. I'm thinking her main bodysuit is all going to be red. She's going to be mostly red, this one. And I'll have to just sneak in a bit of yellow as like a little spot color, maybe on her belt or something, or around her neck. Now, painting to camera is a different experience. Constantly having to looking at my two camera angles and thinking, what the hell? Where am I? Not quite the position I would normally be in, but this is okay. Why am I wearing headphones? I'm wearing my headphones like some kind of maniac. Take those off. All right. Splash a bit of red in there. I mean, I guess I could cut away with the power of editing magic. And then I can just paint this however comfortably I like. I can get in my goblin pose, like this. And I can just paint. You guys wouldn't even know. At this stage, it doesn't really matter if we get anything on the hair because we've got plenty of time to come back and touch up the hair. That base coat of brown is only a base coat. It's not going to be our actual kind of final color. We can always patch it up if we need to. One slight issue with this being a 3D print. This is normally the kind of miniature you would probably sub-assemble. I would have probably have liked to have her separate to her hair to paint her, as I did with the official Medusa miniature, because it's quite a job to get in there. So we might have to get our brush in as far as we can reach, and just hope that that's enough. Again, we'll get some on the hair. That's okay. The general rule, if you can see it, you can probably get your brush into it. And if you can't get your brush into it, you probably can't see it. Certainly not at a gaming level. Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. Okay, that is a first coat almost done. We'll let that dry. I'm gonna grab a coffee and we'll probably slap another coat on it. All right, let brush a rinse. Don't let this dry on there. Bring it to a point in your mouth because you're a filthy, disgusting painter. Yeah, go make yourself a coffee. Right, so with that second layer done, we are ready to move on. I think probably paint some shadows. Now, it's not a completely perfect base layer. Like, you can still see a little bit of that brown undercoat showing through, but you know what, life's too short. We want to paint this miniature, so we're not gonna worry about it too much. That's not really going to impact our final design. Let's just paint some miniatures. Right. So my plan now is to paint in some shadows. I've sort of gone off using washes and things for shadows because, for one, I find it more fun painting in the shadows. It's kind of exhilarating. And two, you have a lot more control over it. I think you can aim for a much better kind of final result if you kind of paint those shadows in yourself. So that's what we're going to try and do today. There's still definitely plenty of room for washes in the painting process. There's some bits where you can't really be bothered, or it's not going to work. Like maybe for the hair, we might find actually all those little lines might be initially better to just add in some shadow with a wash. Oh, we'll get to that when we come to it. Anyway, I'm trying a little experiment today. I've got some Two Thin Coats Royal Cloak, which is kind of a really dark plum colour. And we're going to try mixing that in with our Mephiston Red to create a kind of purpley shadow. We got a similar thing going on with Crimson Dynamo, which I just glazed in a purple wash. That's really, really subtle. We're going to try a little bit less subtle with this one. Although they've got like a unifying scheme, they haven't got a rigid, regimented scheme. I want to get some hints of reds and yellows and stuff in there, but there isn't specific values I want to hit. So in this case, we're going to go for a more purpley red. Medusa's classic costume is, of course, purple, or at least her most iconic outfit is. So we're going to reference that by having very dark purpley red as our shadow. So I'm mixing those two in there. We've got kind of Something like that going on. I don't really know. I'm making this up as I go along, as I'm sure you'll find out. This is all just whatever's going on. Now, when I paint miniatures, almost always by default, unless I've got any other reason to do so, my light is going to come from the top left of the miniature, kind of about here. And I will imagine the kind of light hitting across there. And so I'll paint most of my shadows in from the right. So I'm going to start with her thigh here. It's a very obvious line on the thigh. Just going to paint in some big broad strokes in. At this stage, we're mostly just looking to block in our shadows. So we're just trying to see which bits will most identify the kind of shape. If ever you've done like painting, traditional two-dimensional painting on a piece of paper, this is a very important process for, telling the audience that your shape is three-dimensional. It's not actually two-dimensional. So yeah, we're going to get right under there, under the legs, under that hair. Big bit of hair is really annoying in the way. Slap that on. Right, so a lot of this leg here is probably going to be in shadow because it's under the hair. So I'm actually going to slap a bit of our purpley red mixture kind of on the side. And we can always come back in and add more of our mid-tone later. For now, just chuck that all into the bottom there. And more that way. Now again, you're not really going to see that, but as long as it's kind of our darker reds, that should be fine. Perfect. Again, you want to keep it nice and thin. Not too thin, but we don't want this to be, because we're painting this directly into the recesses, we don't want to be putting thick paint into the recesses here. There's plenty more paint to come, so we'll keep it quite thin. Right, under our arm there, on the side, under the breast, on the side there. Also going to put some shadows in right at the top of her belt to create some separation between her and her belt. And on the underside, of course. Very important. So that's our ribs there as well. We'll probably pick up a bit of shadow. Again, we keep it thin as well. We can add more shadow by just going back over with our nice thin shadow paint. So her arm in there, completely, you can probably can't even see it from your angle. There we go. Her arm under there. It's all covered up by the hair. It's all going to be in shadow based on our little angle. I should be using this wonderful birthday gift that my friend got me, this lovely water fountain reservoir rinsing thing, because you can just press a little button and it will refresh the water for you. It's very, very handy. Keeps your brushes nice and clean. They were the one that suggested I make a video, and that not being in it, that's not good. So yeah, we'll try and use that in the future. I like to have the second pot to rinse, just because I feel like you can't give this a good swish to get them all out the brushes. So I like to just make sure I have a little pot there as well. Okay, that's step one. That was a pretty good first pass. Pretty happy with that. Now, I think we can probably give a little dry and go in for another pass, just a little bit closer to those shadows, just so that picks up a little bit more. So we won't go quite as far out with these ones, maybe mix in a little bit more purple. Oops, got some red there as well. A little bit of purple, a little bit of red. I'll be a little bit more precise now and just go in for some of those harsher shadows. A little bit more purple. There's quite a lot of purple at this point. This is mostly purple. It's okay, we want those big differences in colour. in the final result, because, you know, otherwise, why are you doing it? I guess what we're painting here now is kind of the shadows as well. If there's a bit that was all that last shadow colour, well, you need to go in and add this even darker shadow, just so that you can still pick out the shapes in the shadow. I think, just for funsies, I'm going to go in just straight with that dark plum colour. Just go in a final little level. This is probably a bit more than you have to worry about. You could easily skip this step. Or just do your own thing. Nothing matters. Paint's paint. You'll do it. It's fine. I'm just talking shit right now. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna have a little sip of my drink. Don't let it get too cold. I let it get too cold. So I'm gonna mix things up now. We could start building out the highlights, but what I don't want to do is sort of go on to do like her gloves, head, and accidentally get stuff on my mid-tone and then have to recover it. If I've already done the highlights, that's a lot more extra steps we have to do. So at this point, I think we're going to move in and block in some of the colour for the rest of her. And yeah, work from there. So she's got these kind of wraps on her hands and legs, feet, rather than sort of, I guess they kind of are gloves. I don't know. No, she's definitely got gloves on, but her feet, she's got kind of feet wraps. Nope. No, I'm looking at it now, and they look like boots. They are boots. So, in keeping with the scheme, it's probably where we want to put our yellow. Now, we don't have to do bright yellow. We could just kind of suggest the scheme by going for more of a beige. What have I got here? I've got some Zandri Dust, Tolan Sand. We could give these two a go. Maybe mixing in a little bit more of a yellow to bring it slightly closer to that scheme, but kind of definitely have a more muted yellow in there. So let's try that. A bit of Zandri Dust. Zandri Dust is quite thick. It's a bit of an old pot, this one. So I'll pop that down there. That will need to be thinned out, but I don't think that is yellow enough. We'll need a little bit of yellow. So a bit of Avalan Sunset. Let's rinse that off so we don't contaminate our paints. And now this is also very thick, so we need to thin these out quite a bit. These are older pots. Cool. So let's get a bit of water. That's not looking too bad. That's pretty good. All right, let's just mix a bit more of that up because we've got a decent amount to cover. That's pretty good. A little bit more water. Okay, we are going over brown and we are painting yellow, which is one of the harder paints to kind of cover dark colours with. So this may take a few layers. Yes, excellent. Now we'll try and be careful and avoid going onto our red outfit because we've just painted in those shadows, so we don't really want to spill over too much. Do we like that? Don't know if I like that, but let's just put in some more. We'll see how we feel. She's looking quite superhero-y. I was thinking it seemed a bit of a stark contrast, but actually, you know, she sort of feels like more of a kind of like Phoenix Force style sort of character. When you look at her in that kind of light, this doesn't look too bad. And I think once we introduce some yellow to the belt, I think that will bring it all together a little bit. That might be all right. Let's give it a go. Let's see how this looks. Okay, I got a little bit in over the top on the thing there, so we're going to rescue that. Just rinse your brush off, keep it moist, and just bring the brush in and just mop it up. Do a couple passes, rinse it off, and if you act quick, you can just kind of rub that paint that you went over with, rub it off, and we shouldn't need to worry about coming back there. Excellent. Her other foot is actually hidden in the hair. You actually can't, there's no part of that model that exists. That is just in the hair. So we don't have to worry about that, but we definitely need to do another coat. So we'll do that. All right. That's not too bad. Need still another coat yet. So in the meantime, I'm just going to put some color on this belt. So, or maybe the belt might do a brown, but the M for her Medusa symbol, I'll pick that out in yellow for sure. That we might even go in with a bit more saturated color. A proper yellow for that maybe. Not looking too bad. Now, her face cowl, she's kind of got this little divider around her neck. I think we'll do that in a very similar color. So let's make sure we get a layer of that in now. Yeah, all right. That's something. Let's go around all the other bits that we just done. Give it that third coat. Bring a little bit more of that yellow in this time, maybe. Still undecided. Commit to the bit. All right. Yeah, I'm starting to get warmed up to that face mask now. And the yellow, that's looking pretty good. So again, that coat, still not perfect, but I think we're going to sit with that. We're going to be happy because we're still going to come in. It's not our final coat. Life's too short. Paint your minis. Let's just move on. Be fine. Be absolutely fine. Now, we'll let that dry, and I think for the yellow, we might bring in a little wash. Now, I love to use a little bit of Raglan Flesh Shade on yellow. I think it's really fun. However, again, we've got that kind of purple, slight purple undertone theme going on. Could this be a Carroburg Crimson kind of day? Maybe it is. Is that what we're doing? No. No. Yeah? No. I don't know. Oh, it's just so, I don't know. I want to come back to that. I'll come back to that idea. I'm going to move some paints out of the way. Come back to the washes. For now, let's block in some colour for the face. Again, with the faces, I like to challenge myself, rather than just go for mid-tone and wash. We're going to start with shadow. I'm going to start with some Doomball Brown. We're going to go for a Caucasian skin tone. And we're going to start with our darker shadows. Doomball Brown is quite a reddy brown, which is going to be quite similar to our actual base coat, a little bit brighter. But for some bits, I paint to a formula, and I have a formula for my Caucasian skin tone. And there's not a lot of flesh on here, so I'm not going to worry about deviating too much from it. We'll stick to that. Go right in under that little sort of piece of costume on her neck. And then we've got a little bit of a hairline at the top here. We're just going to hit that with that colour as well. Okay, that is all of our skin tone showing. So we'll just... It's already nearly dry now. I'm going to go and slap another coat of that over. Yeah. All right. All right, now let's just quickly slap out some more on the face while we're here. I'm doing this all in a weird order, but anyway, got some Cadian Flesh Tone, which we're going to mix in with our Doomball Brown. I'm going to go for, I don't know, 50-50 or whatever kind of that is. Again, rinse it out. Not rinse it out, thin it out. Maybe a little bit more brown in there. We've not got a lot of face, so let's do a few passes. And then we're going to cover pretty much all of it in the second layer. We're going to leave maybe just tiny little bits under her nose. I'm actually seeing now her mask doesn't go all the way down her nose, goes a little bit over. So we did miss her nose a bit, but that is fine. We're just going to go straight in with this colour on the nose, even though it was already yellow. Because that nose is going to be one of the brightest bits, so it doesn't really matter if that Doomball isn't on her nose. So I'm going to go top of her lip there. The Doomball Brown is mostly going to show kind of under her bottom lip, right at the joint of the mask and the face, just under her nose. That's probably going to be the only bits we're going to leave that original base colour showing. Kind of flat of her cheek there needs it as well, I think. Okay, give that a little rinse. Use the nice new one, Nate. And then we're going to mix in some more Cadian Flesh Tone. Much brighter this time. We'll go for about there. Keep it damp. And then do the same thing again, just we want to see a little bit more of the previous tone below. So nose. Go for a little bit at the top of her lip. I'm going to get in close here. That little bit of dust on her face. Might be a job for the knife. Very good. So top lip. Cheek there. Flat of that cheek's going to be mostly this colour. Let's not forget her bottom lip. Okay, we'll get a little bit of her under chin because we've got a few quite brighter tones to come, so still plenty to do. Of course, her hairline. Do something about her eyes in there as well in a minute, but we may come to that once we've done the mask, because I suspect we might need a little bit of wash on the mask that might ruin any work we do on the eyes now, so we will come back to that. Okay, do another little pass with this colour. Keep it nice and thin. Being nice and steady here. Now I think I'm just going to go for some pure Cadian Flesh Tone. Bit of water on my ferrule there. Get that off so it doesn't thin my paint out too much. Got air and hair there as well. Let's just try and repoint that brush. Cool. Now we'll go in again. Again, slightly less than we did last time. Face, upper lip. I'll go for the top of her cheek this time. Side of her face. We'll do slightly more on this side of her face because, again, remembering the light's coming from the top here. And then we'll be a little bit more sparing on this side. Follow the line of her jaw. Get her bottom lip. That side of the jaw. of course, top of her head. All right, looking good. Now we want to start going in for some sharper highlights, just because I don't know why I wanted to do it. Now, if you highlight your Circadian flesh tone with white, you might look quite chalky. We only need a little bit here, so I'm going to use some of this ice yellow. It's kind of very pastel yellow. I've not got much of this left, so excuse me while I just splurt this onto the palette. There we go. That should be all we'll need. And we're just going to mix in a dab of this. It seems to be, this ice yellow seems to be really potent, so you really don't need much in your mix. Okay, thin that out. Give some clean water. Thin it out. Too much ice yellow will still kind of make it look kind of chalky. We just need a tiny little bit. So again, I've got another errant hair, so let's just repoint that brush. Give this brush a good clean after this. Tip of the nose, top of the lip, a little bit of the bottom lip, a bit of the chin. And then here we might just try and get her cheekbones, although her mask kind of covers that up a little bit. Just follow her jawline. Honestly, that is looking pretty good. Pretty happy with that. All right, we might come back and add a little bit more to that, but that will do for now. That will absolutely do for now. Right, now let's go back to the yellow. The yellow's fully dried. How have we decided on our shadow color? All right, I'm thinking maybe a little mix of the two. Should we mix the two? Is that wild? Again, making this up as we go. Let's just put some on the palette and see what we think. So that's our initial color. That is quite red. A bit of this Carabao Crimson. Let's have a look at that. That's very, very purple. Yeah, let's mix the two. Let's do it. Right. Mix our two washes together. You can do that. No one's going to stop you. We're gonna wash our yellow. Just gonna go all over for now, and then we'll go back in and paint in some of that base tone, to then kind of re-establish our highlights and our direction of light traveling down. Okay, now just going around looking for whether it's a little bit too much pooling. A little bit in our hand there. Just rinse our brush off. Just go in and just mop up anything that's looking a little bit too much with a dry brush. Okay, I'm going to slap some on this M here. I don't think it's really going to do much, but again, just making up as I go along. Nothing matters. Nothing's real. It's all just paint. Okay. Now I think her belt, I was going to do that brown, but I think there's a lot of brown and red and stuff going on. So let's just keep it real. Let's make her belt black. That would be a nice way to kind of separate her body out a little bit. So let's get some black. Let's go for this black, which is Vallejo black. It's quite a matte black. Is that important? I don't know. I don't know. Cool. Thin that out. Just block that in. Maybe at time that was maybe a little bit too thin. Probably should have waited till that wash dried, but I'm impatient. And I'm trying to paint this before my fiance gets home, because I feel like when she's home, I'll be all embarrassed to talk in front of the camera. She can hear me, so I'll probably end up not finishing this video. That'd be sad. Okay, almost got it in there. Just get a little bit of that off. Just get it in there. That's probably fine. Follow that belt round right around the back. Okay, that's cool. I like that colour. I think that is a good shout. Okay, rinse that off. Now, while that wash on our yellow is drying, I want to make sure that's fully dry before we try and come back in and re-highlight it. Gives us a little bit of time to kill, so let's go and re-highlight some of this red. I'm going to start by just picking our base colour back up. I'm Mephiston red over here. I'm just going to go and tidy up some of where I kind of went over a little bit with the shadow. A little bit too heavy-handed, so we're going to pick out some of these creases on top of her leg here. I'm going to put some more lines on top of her thigh. That's going to be one of the brightest bits. That was a bit of a thick highlight there, so we're just going to trim that off. Excellent. On her midriff here, we're going to pick some of the ribs out, especially that one there. This is why we weren't too worried about getting a completely even coverage at that base level, because I was planning on coming back and doing this anyway. So I knew that there's some little bits on the top still showing through. It's not really going to matter. Maybe a little bit too far there. So again, as we did earlier, I've overdone it a bit. Just clean the brush, wet the brush, just mop it up, pull it back, and you just go back in and try again. As long as you're acting quick, it's not too bad. Okay, that's good. Now, her leg down here, the one that's almost entirely in shadow, probably did overdo a little bit, but I'm going to just thin that out even more than we've done before. Some might say slightly too much. That's just because we're going to kind of glaze it back in, because we don't want this to be too light, because this is going to be mostly in shadow. But the bottom of her knee, where it is a little bit more exposed down here, will pick up a lot more light there. So just kind of glaze it back in. Cool. Thicken it up again. Some bits like some folds here where they were part of the shadow, but those ridges will pick up the light a bit. So let's bring those back in. Cool. All right. Pretty happy with that. Nice. Now we can start to bring in some highlights. So let's find a nice colour to highlight it with. Some evil suns there, and some red. Now, if I remember, this comes out a little, that's kind of almost as dark as our Mephiston, so probably don't want that. Maybe more of this kind of orangey red, because we will build it up to orange. I always find when you're painting the highlights yourself, you want to bring it a lot brighter than you think. So let's put some of this down. Where do we want to put this? How do real painting tutorials, how do they keep their palette so nice and clean? Here I am just trying my damnedest. It's still looking really really messy. All right, bringing in some of this bloody red, which is kind of orange, a little bit orange. Gonna mix it in with our Mephiston because we don't want the jump to be too stark. There's a little spot of water on that palette there. Okay, now we're going to start painting in the highlights. So the opposite of doing our shadows, we're looking for the bits that are going to be closest to that light as we imagine it coming from the top. That paint is probably too thin. Let's bring a bit more of that in. Now again, this is more of our kind of mid-tony colour, so we want to be a bit liberal with this. I'm going to put a little bit on her arm, even though that is kind of fully in shadow. I'm just going to kind of pick her arm out a little bit. Make sure we get the tops of those folds, and her knee, and her shin, any of those shapes that kind of work before. Basically anywhere that's got Mephiston red on at the moment, we're going to stick some of this coverage red. Just make sure that we leave a little bit of that Mephiston red showing through for that gradient. Excellent. Right, got a little bit on that knee down here. Again, though, maybe we just thin that out a little bit so it is not too bold. More glaze it in. It's probably a little bit too dark down here, but it's okay. Cool. I messed up, so we're gonna fix that. Bit of moisture. Ooh, too much there. All right, looking good. Now, do it again. This is my favorite bit. I love this bit. So we'll do it again. This time I'm just going straight in with the bloody red, which now that we thin that out, you can see that it's actually quite orange. Maybe too orange. I'm just letting a little bit of that red in. All right. Same again. Looking pretty good. I think let's do another pass again with a bit more, even more orange. Now I've got a Troll Slayer orange. That might be quite nice. Give that a good shake. Let's get a bit of that out. Let's take that next to our bloody red and mix some of that in. It's going to be still mostly the bloody red in there, I think. All right. Get rid of the excess. Bring in some of that orange. Steadily orange. So here we're going to kind of start to bring out the shapes of the thigh, even though they're fully kind of in the light, if you know what I mean. So there is a little bit of a crevice here of those two muscles. I don't know what those muscles are called, but there's two of them there. Just going to kind of define them with our light. Yippee! This is why it can be good to kind of make sure you're thinning your paints. Because sometimes, I know the initial kind of reaction is like, why would I bother thinning my paints when it just means I have to paint more and for longer? But it does mean you can get this kind of this control, like steadily introducing your colour, that just gives you much smoother, buttery smooth, delicious blends and transitions and gradients that you can't do if you paint straight from the pot. Now that is directed at one person in particular. You know who you are. Thin your paints. Use a damn palette. Doesn't have to be a wet palette. Just use a palette. Lets you choose when you're thinning your paints. Lets you kind of choose, like, oh, that was a bit too much water, or that was a little bit too dark. So you can just bring in like a little bit more of your colour. It's not a big scam sold to you by Big Paint to sell more paint palettes. It's not. Okay, looking good. Now might be the time that we come in, maybe just some pure orange. Now, this is quite a stark difference to our colour. We could maybe mix in a little bit of red, but I think instead what we're going to do is just keep it quite thin. So bring in quite a bit of water there. Maybe even a tiny bit more. And now we'll start bringing this in right in those brightest points. Okay, that needs to be even thinner. A little bit of our wash coming in there. It's going to start infecting our colour. Bring it maybe too dark. So we'll try not to bring too much of that in. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. So this is quite a bit thinner than we'd normally paint with. But again, we're going to get most of that off of the brush. Going for a sort of a semi-glaze. We're not really glazing, but some of the techniques are in there. So we're going to, have much waterier paint. We're going to get most of it off the brush, and we're going to kind of brush in towards, where the light's coming. It's going to bring it up, push away from us. And we're going to bring that in on these kind of flatter areas. There's larger areas around her breasts and on her thigh. Because it's quite thin, we're not going to do too much of the kind of really sharp highlights. Just bring that second brush in. This is just a clean, dry brush, just to mop some of that up. Because it's quite thin, we're not going to be able to do in some of those sharp areas like those folds of her clothes, because that will probably just get lost in the crevices. So we're just going to stick to these flatter areas. Again, pulling it up towards the light. And then just keep going around. And as that last bit that you've done has dried, you move on to the next bit while it dries, and then when it's done, you kind of come back and you add in a little bit more of that big orange highlight. Now, I think that's looking cool. That is probably one of the better jobs I've done. Quite stark contrast on the colours there, but really helps kind of demonstrate what we're going for. Okay, now that I've kind of God, most of this paint has gone off that brush. I am kind of feeling a bit more confident going in for these smaller crevices. Just very carefully. Maybe not. I don't know. Start to work our way towards them. Okay, that's good. I'm happy with that. We could probably now come in and start picking out some of that yellow on the mask. Let's do that. Let's go back to our color here. So this is our color that we based it initially with, roughly. So what I'm going to do is go in and now, like we did with the suit initially, we're going to add in the shadows, but we're going to just start with the highlight side. So basically the areas that I'm going to leave, not putting on my base coat, is going to be our shadows. So it's sort of the opposite of what we did before. But we're making sure we leave those darkest recesses here showing. So we've got these kind of buckles on a boot. Make sure we pick all of those out. And we pick some of the colour out in between. And we go around on that side of a foot. And whatever that is going on the top of her foot there and on her shoes. We'll follow around a little bit at the top. Then I'm actually just going to leave that other side. We'll leave that. Right, same on her arm, quite along the top. Cool, leave that. Her fist kind of right in the hair there. A little bit at the front of that, just on the top side. And then on her neck, around her shoulders. On her mask. Cool. Going on the hairline ever so slightly there, let's just sop that up. Fantastic. All right. So that's already looking a little better. Now I think we want to bring in a bit more yellow. So start highlighting it up. So got a flash git yellow. I think we're going to bring that in alongside our base color here. Just to brighten those up a bit. Going to go pretty much where we just did, but I'm going to take this opportunity now to pick out some of the shapes and the folds in this boot that we didn't before. Leave some of that previous colour below. Again, follow it round slightly. I'm following it around maybe a bit more than I should do on this side, just because that's the front of the miniature. So you're going to see this bit here a little bit more. So again, we're just going to kind of go against maybe what physics should tell us and do more what we kind of want to see. Just a little bit more of that colour on the front. That's all. Like, that's why you can't just like grab an airbrush and blast your highlight color from the top like a big zenithal highlight and assume that that's going to do the same job, because it's not. That'll give you a completely accurate like one directional light source, but that's not reality. In reality, light bounces off everything and comes around, gets into areas of your model that your light source doesn't directly hit. So that's where you just kind of can get away with painting in highlights where you maybe weren't expecting. I actually just don't know what I'm talking about. It's fine. If I say things with enough conviction, people might assume I do know what I'm talking about, and then I might give wrong information, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to give out wrong information. I'd rather just give out no information. All right. These are coming together nicely. I'm going to get a little bit of the palm of her hand, because again, you kind of might be able to see a little bit more of that. Go overdid it a little bit, just smooth that out. Okay, it's looking good. Now, again, I think we'll go in with just a little bit more. Actually, I don't want to do just the full yellow, because that's really bright. I do want to mute it down a little bit. Maybe we'll bring in a little bit of this ice yellow that I got out earlier to brighten that up. So it's still a little bit muted. It's not our full yellow colour, but it is still going closer to white and working a bit more as a highlight colour. There we go. Checking if you guys can see that down there. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, I'm losing a lot of the shapes around her neck, so we're going to come in here and try and paint those in a bit more. Kind of collarbone and stuff here. We're getting lost a little bit, so let's make sure we pick those out. And again, tops your face. They say you want to kind of, the bit of your model that you want to really draw the eye is meant to be the face, so you do want to kind of brighten those up a bit more than you do the rest of the model. Even if, again, because of her thick hair, maybe that would have been more cast in shadow. It's never how we're going to do it on here. Face will always be in the optimal lighting. Okay, this is good. We're happy with this. We are happy with this. It might be time to kind of go on to move on to her hair, to be honest. I'm just going to take this, quickly grab a bit of that black, and just do another coat on her belt. I do jump around when painting all the time. I'm constantly swapping between tasks as my brain kind of will see something else that it noticed, and I'll just swap the colour entirely. Probably not the most efficient form, but I like painting. I find it really relaxing, so I don't really mind if it takes a bit longer. Cool. Now I think we want to do her hair. So the first issue we've got with her hair, it's all brown. That's good. We kind of want it to be brown, but obviously we've gone through and we've got bits on here. So we could go and sort of touch that up, get that back to kind of our original colour, but because we sprayed this with an airbrush, I used a specific airbrush paint, because I've literally used an airbrush once, and that was to do this model. So I just used this Vallejo pre-mixed red-brown, which isn't really going to cover very well straight out of the pot. So we probably want to kind of take a best approximation of the hair, and then kind of just kind of go for a general all-round wash of it. So yeah, it's kind of, well, that was my second coat. So I did that on top of this. So we probably want to kind of find a paint that kind of gets roughly between the two of those, which is honestly probably back to good old Doomball, I reckon. Let's give that a go. See what that's looking like. Look a little bit brighter. That might be okay though, because we could kind of take the opportunity to highlight it a little bit while we're here. Just going to brush that in. I might swap to a slightly bigger brush once I've touched up some of these areas closest to the model. Always remember as well, like, hair isn't consistently one color all the way through. Unless you've just gone through and freshly dyed your hair, it's going to have slight different variations in color as the sign of the sun has hit it, or you're starting to grey out, or so we don't have to worry about it being a completely perfect uniform brown. Again, doesn't matter. It's just having fun. Right. I'm thinking is we might give this a little wash with some Agrax anyway. So I'm not going to worry about too much if I get some of this in those crevices. Like there, I maybe went a bit too far, but that's fine. We will come back and get that. Let's just focus on patching up those areas. Under her knee there. Her leg there. Very good. I've got some bits here where I've handled it and I've actually taken off my base coat. Should be using the painting handle a bit better. All right, okay. So we got all the bits around her legs, arm. Okay, we didn't do too badly. I didn't get too much on the actual hair of the miniature. We got pretty lucky. So I'm going to rinse that brush off. Going to grab, not necessarily a bigger one, but just not my nice. I don't want to be mashing paint into my nice new sable brush. So I've got one of my old ones, which has seen better days. And I'm going to use this just to kind of put more of that Doomball brown on the hair so that those areas we've patched up don't look too obvious. We're going to spread that colour. We're going to confuse people. We're going to dazzle them with our hair. So this is probably a bit thicker than we would normally have our paint. That's fine. That is fine. Just going to brush that in a bit more haphazardly. So it's not really a dry brush. Similar technique for dry brushing, I guess, but definitely a much thicker paint because I'm just trying to cover those areas a bit more intentionally. All right, pretty good. Now, I think we want to highlight this a little bit. Now, my official Medusa model, I kind of paint a bit more ginger, which I think is how her hair is in the TV series, the live action one. It wasn't very good. I wouldn't remember because they cut her hair off in the first episode. So you get to spend too much time with it there. But here, if we go ginger, we're going to be going closer to red, and that's going to maybe get too close to our main scheme here. So we probably want to go more sort of strawberry blonde, I think. So let's bring in a bit more of that Xandri dust that we had over there. We got a little bit on the palette. Wait, do we? No, not really. It's right there. Let's grab a little bit of that. Yeah, we're going to need a little bit more. That's not enough. Let's grab a bit more of that. Stick it down here with our Doomball brown. Going to get close to our flesh tone again. That may be a bit close. So again, we don't want to get too close to that flesh tone because we want separation. We want something different. Yeah, we'll give that a go. So here I think we are going to go for much more of a dry brush. So I'm going to swap this brush out for something a little bit more dry brushy. That's probably not too bad. I need to give that a little clean before I contaminate. Got a nice bit of Talan sand on the side. Pick up some of that doom ball and bring it over. This is where I get a bit of tissue, brush it out, test it on your skin. The classic dry brush technique is you want to be able to see the sort of individual pores of your skin. So testing on yourself could be quite good. You can see it's not filling the cracks of my hand. There you can still see the other paint showing through, so that's probably fine. Right, let's try that, see how that looks. That's good, it's coming through. Probably a little bit too much paint on my brush there because I'm starting to streak a bit. Just going to rub that down a little bit, just get some more of that off. There we go, that's not looking too bad. So we're going to use this kind of as a highlight pass as well, you know, to paint in the shadows. Again, painting the shadows using our highlights, we're going to kind of focus on the areas that's going to be brighter. So we got kind of up here, and we're going to sort of neglect, like under here, where there would be more shadow. Just kind of skip it, give it a little go, just to blend it in, but otherwise, don't focus on it too much. Try and avoid getting too much on our actual character. Just focus on her hair. That'll do. That will do. Okay, now I've missed a little step here. I probably should have done earlier, which is the base color, the actual base material. I want to put a little bit of Sterling Battlemire on there. Just that's a kind of bottom coat for our snow to go on. But I probably should have done that before I touched the hair up, before I dry brushed it. So we're going to have to go in a bit carefully here. Let's grab this little sculpting tool that I've got, which is really handy for putting down base texture. Find ourselves a little bit of Sterling Mud. Not Battlemire, Sterling Mud. I can't seem to find Battlemire anymore. So the mud will have to do. That'll be fine for this though. A little bit on the tool. We're going to kind of, I think the easiest thing here, because there's not a lot of space to do it, is just to not worry about the rim of the base and just tie the rim of the base afterwards. So I'm just going to put it right on the rim and kind of work it in. Now, the reason I'm doing this, I'm not using the standard material, like texture on the actual base, is all of my Winter Guard models. If they're an official Winter Guard model affiliated, they will get a dirt base, a kind of wilderness, Siberian wilderness base with lots of snow. And then if they're an official model that's unaffiliated, like I've got Hood in my list, I like to use the official model for Hood. He has a city base with some kind of melted snow. That's the general rule that I've got. But for miniatures that aren't affiliated, but I've got a specific model for them, specifically just to go in my Winter Guard, like this one or my Taskmaster, I figured since they're only ever going to be used for my Winter Guard, I'll give them the same kind of affiliated Winter Guard base. So got that in there. I've got a little bit on the hair there, so I think what I'm going to do is just going to wipe off some of that and try and just scrape off wig on the hair. We're just going to have to go back with that hair colour once again. Might not be too bad because, as I said, I'm going to put snow down. That will cover a lot of that up. So it should be fine. There's a little bit more on that side. We need to get there. And then the real job's going to be actually getting it in that big circle. Now, if I were clever, I would have probably have done this before sticking the model down, but I didn't because I'm not. It's that impatience coming in again. So we're just going to struggle and see how we do. So again, I'll get most of that down, just cover up those city pavements, scrape it away to get the base rim back. We can scrape all that stuff off later once that's dried, that's not a problem. Bit on this side as well. Spread that around. Maybe this might be a good time because I can't really spread it around with that on there. Just use this old side of this brush here, which is a bit, it's got away. Actually, that's quite nice. I like that one. This one, this is not very nice. This is very stiff. This will be perfect for getting that in there. Just mush it around. Cover up those city streets. We don't want to see those. Yes, perfect. Okay, wash that off. Oh, that brush is gone. That is useless. Don't want that. Let's get some of that. Scrape it off. Okay, yeah, we'll need to bring the brush in there and tidy that up. That's okay. We'll wait for that to dry though. That's all good. That is fine. All right. Pretty happy with that. So while that's drying, let's go back and do some other very important bits. Now, we have eyes. We have eyes. We're getting to that stage of the miniature now where most of it's done. It's probably time to do those eyes. Now, the eyes on here are really, really small. I'm not even sure. Oh, it's gonna be tough. All right. Let's give this a go. Let's give it some more of that. There we go. I'm gonna start with that Doomball Brown that we use as our base tone. Because I never applied that on the eyes. I kind of left that because I knew that the mask was going to cover it up. So we're going to try and just pick the eyes out with our darkest fresh color for like the eyelids and things like that. Now, excuse me if you don't see this, because I'm going to try and do this in whatever way is comfortable for me, and that might mean that you don't see it. So here we go. Okay, first mistake that I made. You want to make sure that when you're doing eyes and things like that, super fine detail, you want to make sure that your paint is properly, sufficiently thin. Not too thin that you will lose your brush to anything. Lose the paint to any recess, but thin enough that it flows off without any effort. Very difficult. There, spin the model round so that we are just putting our brush down towards us. Am I happy with that? Not especially, but it's not doing too badly. Might have to just bring some of that yellow in at the end to touch up. It's often the way. Right, so now we need white for the whites of the eyes. I'm going to stay with pure white here. So this is just this is dead white actually, so it's not actually pure white, but it's the whitest paint I've got, and that's going to be fine. Thinning white with clean water, getting it sufficiently thin again, perfect, and go again. Excellent. So gone over slightly there, but we will go back again with the yellow. just pick that out. Now actually I think we need to go on this left eye, it's going a little bit more because we need space to put those pupils in. So again, apologies if you can't see this, because I'm just going to go. You need to make sure you've got whatever position is most comfortable for you. And you've got your 3 points of contact, both elbows down, wrists together. I've actually got the miniature on my knee, which is probably why you can't see it. Okay. Pretty good. Now, you could almost leave it there. I'm kind of tempted to leave it there because she's got that kind of comic book mask where almost the eyes are often just like pure white in those kinds of masks. I'm actually pretty tempted to leave that there. I might, for now, see how I feel once we've brought a little bit of that yellow back in. Yeah, I might leave that as is. You know, I've sort of only seen it now. She kind of looks like Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman. Oh well. We're at this stage now. I'm not going back and changing it. It's getting a bit more bright yellow here for the little M on her belt. Very good. Got some black here. Now, I'm going to highlight the black with this ice yellow. Bring a little bit of that in there rather than white. Because we're doing a lot of sort of warm colours. I'm not going to start introducing a cold one now. So if we're highlighting, bringing this black up to grey, it's going to be a slightly yellow grey. Pretty imperceptible at this stage though. You could use white or just grey. I don't care. Nothing matters. It's just paint on models. It's all good. Okay, I'm going to bring that up a bit more so it is even grayer. And that's just so that when we go and do panel lining, which is what we're going to do in a little bit, you can see it. It'll separate out from this belt a little bit more. Otherwise the belt will kind of get lost in our panel lining and it might look a little bit bad. So we're just going to keep mixing in ice yellow. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's just do some proper edge highlights on it. Quite a bit brighter. It's maybe a little too thick. There we go. Just a little bit more on that. Amazing. Right. Pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to go in and do some panel lining. So we had the matte one. I think the matte one doesn't quite work as well, the matte black panel lining, as the Citadel Abaddon black does. Only trouble is, this is an old pot. This is quite thick. So let's bring that up. We will want to thin it down quite a bit for panel lining, because we do want this to really just flow off. So I bring quite a bit of water in there. Let's get some of the cleaner stuff. That's looking good. Nice thin point. You'll notice I did all that eye work with a size 2. This is the quality of this brush. Raphael Kolinsky Sable Series 8404. That point. You can do everything with a size 2. Perfect. Amazing. Okay, now we're going to panel line. So what we are doing here is we are basically outlining objects with black. And this will feel weird and unrealistic, but it's just going to help separate different sections so much nicer, and it will look a lot better, but it will feel a bit weird when you're painting it in. So for example, as I said, the top of her belt, we're just gonna put in pure black right at the top of our belt, being really careful. And again, if we go over, we'll just have a brush on standby, a damp brush on standby, just to mop it up. We're just putting pure black in where those two objects meet. And we'll just outline around the M so that that really stands out. Very good. We've got where her boot meets her leg, different object. So let's highlight that by painting in some black shadow. I'm also going to do where her hair wraps around her leg as well. Okay. Very good. Now what I kind of want to do, just a little bit more water on that, is get a panel line between that sort of cowl around her shoulder and the red. So between the yellow and the red, I'd love to get a line of black in there. This might be a little bit difficult. It could ruin stuff, so be ready to undo mistakes as they happen. Going in really carefully. It's just about working. Spin around. Okay, that's not actually done too badly. A little bit where it's kind of spilt over, so we can go back in with some yellow and kind of pick that back out again, but that is what I wanted, so that's perfect. Okay, I'm just going to go for the very top of her mask. Again, sorry if you can't see it. Now, round on her arm where the hair meets, just to pick her out from her hair. Okay, that is getting pretty good. Maybe just in those deepest recesses under her breasts there. Put in those darkest shadows. Okay, so with those darkest darks done, now we need our lightest lights. So we are going to go in to do some of our proper highlights. So I'm just going to use some pure ice yellow now to highlight some of our yellow bits. So very top of our mask there. The bottom just before it meets the highlight, and I just kind of pick out where her eyebrows would be under the mask. Lovely. And we've got the same thing on like her collarbones. Pick those out. And just tidy up under there. We have some of the top side of a finger, some of these ridges on her hand. And a boot down here. Just trying to catch the tops of each of those buckles. Okay. Reload. Got top corners of this M on her belt. Nice and bright. We want that to be nice and clear. And then that little hand at the back as well. Let's not lose that. Not leave that out. Get a few extra lines in there as well. There we go. Cool. So that's the yellow. Pretty happy with the yellow. Now let's just do the same with the red. So again, we want our lightest light. So last time we went for the orange. That's our kind of final layer. So I think now we bring a little bit of this ice yellow into the orange. It's maybe our final highlight color. Now that's kind of muted it down a little bit. So maybe we more wanted some of this brighter yellow. Yeah, I think that looks a bit better than the ice yellow. So I'm going to bring this, I'm going to mix it over here instead. So we've got an orange, yellow combo just for our brightest highlights. And we'll be quite sparing with these. Okay, that's feeling a little bit too thick. Thin it down a bit. Go again. It's remarkable how you put it down, you think it looks a bit too bright. By the time you've gone back and thinned that paint, it's sort of dried on the model a bit and you get a much kind of more realistic or more of an accurate colour that you're going for. So yeah, maybe you want it looking ever so slightly too bright on the model when it first goes down, because you are going to, it's going to dry a little bit. Bring a little bit more of that orange in. Go again. Trying to follow that shape round. Got a little bit of dried on the hair there. Take that off. Right. Okay. I am pretty happy with what we got there. I think just a little bit more really bright highlight now for the belt. Just because I feel like that is getting lost in that panel lining. Just want to separate that out again. Although we are painting grey, it is still going to read as black. The same goes with the suit. The suit is red, but it's mostly orange on there. So yeah, I don't know. So what? Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to stick to the decision to keep the eyes completely white. I'm just going to lock that in by going in with some of that yellow and just covering up that what I've kind of spilled over. Okay. There we have it. Pretty good. Now I think her hair could be a little brighter, a little bit more on the kind of strawberry blonde side. So I think we're going to go back to our dry brush, go back to more of that Sandra Dust, maybe Talan sand, because that's a little bit more yellow. Just go in with some pure that. Just going to thin it entirely on my hand. It's when you know I'm in business. There we go, that's more what I'm looking for. Oh, we do need to go back and just paint over where some of that base texture has come in. I want to make sure we do that before the snow. Because once the snow's down, we don't really want to go anywhere near that with a paintbrush. So let's get a little bit of that out. Lovely stuff. That is more what I was envisioning. that'll do for now. Let's get a brush in. Again, I'll swap to my old brush just because there's still some wet texture paint in there. I don't really want that going on my nice new brush, so I'm going to use an old size 2 Raphael Cleansey Sable. Once they get to a certain condition, they kind of get rotated out of my main fleet and become just a dirty brush. So this is quite an expensive brush to be doing this for, but it's served its purpose. It no longer holds its value, so we're just going to take the opportunity. Grab a little bit of that water there. Let's just block that in. Now around here, we've got a few bits there as well. Probably needs to be a darker brown. Rather than grabbing a new one out, I'm just going to grab a little bit of black. Maybe a little bit of this purple, a little bit of black. Just mix that in. Because we don't need a specific colour for this, just need something a bit closer to our initial rot brown base coat, the one that we sprayed it with Armour Brown. There we go. And that's just because the reason I'm doing that there is because that's right at the bottom. That doesn't want to be too bright. And actually, probably want to stick that down here as well because we don't want anything too bright down there, drawing our eye into the hole. Right. So that texture paint is very nearly dry at the bottom, but again, I'm really impatient. So we're going to start trying to see if we can do the snow texture now. Start mixing it up. Hopefully, we'll be able to avoid that little wet spine there and get the snow down. So I'll show you my little recipe for snow. We need, first of all, a little pot. Got one here. It's got some old stuff, actually. No, that's too thick. That's been gone a little while. Usually you can use the snow that you make for a while, sort of a few weeks after you make it, but that is a little bit too dried up. Let's just deposit that somewhere. I'll sort that out later. Get most of that out. That'll be all right. Start going. We'll get a couple secret ingredients. A little bit of Mod Podge matte. This Woodland Scenic Soft Flake Snow. Now this is my favourite recipe. Now I'm only doing one miniature. I don't have a big snowy project lined up, so I'm going to try and make a little bit, but we're always going to make more than we need. It's just impossible. So I'm going to do a couple little squirts of paint in there. Not paint, sorry, Mod Podge. And then we're going to add this snow effect until it's kind of like, I don't know, porridge, depending on how you like your porridge. I don't really know. Much like everything, just knock that miniature over. Yeah, just knock your mini over, break it. That's an important part of the painting process. I always say a miniature's never actually finished until I drop it on the floor, and I haven't dropped this one on the floor yet. So there's obviously more that needs doing. Until I drop it on the floor, there will always be more. So I don't know if you can really see that. I might be a little overexposed for that paint in there, but that is not thick enough, so we're going to add more. Just going to use this sculpting tool like a spoon some in. So that's now probably ever so slightly too thick, I reckon. That's kind of like, I don't know how to describe how you want it, but you just know, the more you have, the more the thinner it is, the more it will kind of settle down, kind of like slush snow. And obviously the thicker it is, the more you'll see the granules and the more it will hold its shape. So I've got something like that. So it kind of doesn't fall immediately off of my tool, but does kind of move. I guess that's kind of what you want. All right, let's give this a go. Now, this, I want to put, don't want too much of it on. I'm going to try and get it around where that dirt was. I'm going to try and be a lot more careful now because I don't really have the luxury of tidying up quite as easily with this. So we're going to try and be a bit careful. Now, if I wanted realism, I'd probably have a bit more of a plan. Because obviously, if we imagine Medusa is hurling through the snow, guiding herself on her hair, she's going to be kicking up the stuff all around her. But I feel like that's a problem I'd need to solve in the modelling stage, which I didn't consider it at all for this. So we're just going to suspend our disbelief for a bit and just going to put snow on, and it's going to lap right up to her hair, and we're going to be okay with that, and that's going to be fine. Again, anything that goes on the rim of the base, that's fine. We can clean that up. We're more worried about avoiding the hair for now. So a little bit more of that. Got plenty there. I don't need to worry about that running out. Again, we're going to go around the rim of the hair here. You can't really see that. You're over there. Rim of the hair here. Try and just squeeze a little bit in that gap down there, under that little bit of hair. Okay. Now, this is the scary bit. Apologies. Scary bit is going to be dunking it into that hair. I'm thinking I just gather up quite a bit on my tool, dunk it in there and let it kind of settle. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get most of that off. Carefully put that in. Just see if I can encourage it off the end of my tool. Okay, it's not too bad. Push that round. Okay, that's pretty good. That's not too bad. Now, I'm just going to put little flecks of this around the hair. Just as kind of, I guess, as she's kind of moving, she's picking up little bits of snow around the bottom. And also that'll just help cover up the fact that I got a bunch on the hair by accident. So that's one way of covering up mistakes. If your mistakes are consistent, they'll look important. I'm also just going to put a little bit of dollar. I'm going to cheat. Well, we had that broken bit of hair earlier. I am actually just going to put some snow on the end of it. And now you won't even notice. You'll be like, oh, wow. What an amazing little bit of snow. And you'll be really impressed. Actually, it's just a broken piece of the model. And I'm going to put some snow. I love this snow because you can just cover up mistakes. There's a bit here where the miniature, I think, didn't print all that well. And there was kind of like a bit of stepping on it. It didn't look too good. So I'm just going to put some snow on there and it's gone. Amazing. Brilliant. Okay, cool. So that's cool. That's kind of her hair kind of whipping up the snow around. Not too much of it. Yes. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. That is the snow. Done. Now I'm going to scrape the rest of that off into there. That'll be good for a little while. I've got Emma Frost in the post. She's going to be joining my team later. So hopefully that'll still be good when it's time to paint her. Just going to push that snow right into the corner. But I don't want to mess around with it too much because obviously we know there was a bit of that wet Sterling Battlemire at the back there. We don't really want that mixing with our paint because it will then turn brown, and then when we don't want brown snow. Okay, so that's done. We want to clean up the rest of the base. So I just grab that kind of gross looking tissue and I wet it with a little bit of water. It's actually so gross. I don't know. There we go. That's coming in. Now I'm just going to use that to wipe up the rim of this base. because nothing bugs me more than a dirty base rim. Now let's just use our little sculpting tool just to dig out that bit there. I quite like the Marvel Crisis Protocol bases. They have like a little lip around the base before you get to the actual model. I like that, and that's cool. But that also means I have to clean that as well. Kind of just push that around in there. That is looking pretty clear. Now there is one last step, and that is our base rim. And my base rim's all the same. They're all going to be red, and they're all just Mephiston red, pure and simple. So some of that down. This can be quite thick. I don't thin this out too much because we're not really worried about losing any texture on the base. We're just going to paint it around like that. Right, so there we have it. I did actually just drop the model on the floor as well, so it is now officially complete. My Winter Guard Medusa. Base rim still needs to dry just a little bit, but that is pretty good. I'm going to get some pictures of this, and then probably slap a varnish of it, just to keep our little paint job nice and clean. There we go. So yeah, this was fun actually. A lot easier talking to the camera than I thought it would be. I mean, I haven't tried editing this footage. It might be all garbage, but if this makes it out somewhere and you're listening to this and you liked it, let me know in the comments. And if you didn't like it, also let me know in the comments. That's good for the algorithm, so I'm told. Yeah, there we go. One Medusa, not Medusa, 3D print, Winter Guard, Stalwart Minis, Nate Paint, Medusa, Winter Guard, red paint. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. Oh my, okay.